Hilchos Avodah Zarah Perek Sheni. Laws of Idol Worship, chapter number 2. Yesterday we saw the history, how Avodat Kochavim developed. It came from a beginning, an initial desire to honor Hashem, but then it went south. People started to serve the actual images till people forgot about Hashem. And only after Avraham Avinu came around and discovered that Hashem is the true creator, he began to completely decimate the idol worship movement, but it didn't take long till it was back and going. The Jews almost lost touch with Hashem in Mitzrayim, but only because Hashem loved us, He chose us, which means He gave us the power from the top down to be able to combat Avodah Zarah, and from now on we have special laws about how to treat Avodah Zarah. So let's see today, I guess you could say, what's going to be the fundamentals of Avodah Zarah. What is the basic Isur, what is the basic prohibition, and plus we're going to get a completely side topic today, which is the topic of Migadef, cursing Hashem, and the Rambam is going to say why it's included in Avodah Zarah. So let's see, Halacha Aleph. Ikar hatzivui ba'avodat kochavim. The main commandment when it comes to serving idols is Shelo la'avod echad mikol habruim, is not to serve any created being. Lo malach, v'lo galgal, v'lo kochav, not an angel, not a sphere, not a planet, v'lo echad me'arba'ah ha'yesodot, and not one of the four elements, fire, air, water, and earth. V'lo echad mikol hanivraim mehen, nor any of the created beings that come from them. Everything in the world is a composite of one of these, or a couple of these four elements. So you can't serve any created being. Even if the person says that he knows God is the real God, and he's only serving this creature like Enosh, the original idol worshippers served. And the people of his generation, in the beginning, he's still called an idol worshipper. Because even for a Jew, even what's called shituf, even to partner Hashem with another power, is also forbidden. We have to know that everything in this world is kegarzen b'yad hachotzev. It's like an axe in the hands of a woodchopper. The axe has no control. Right? If a guy chopped down a tree, who are you going to think? The person or the axe? You think the woodchopper. So Hashem also is the woodchopper, and everything else are His tools. Inyan zeh, this concept of not ascribing any importance to any other created being, hu shehizhira Torah alav ve'amra. That's what Torah was warning about when it said, upen tisai necha hashamayma. Maybe you're going to raise your eyes to the heavens. You're going to see the sun or the moon or the stars. Which Hashem really gave to all the nations. What was Hashem worried about? We're going to look up to the sky and look at the sun and the moon? Is there a problem to look at them? No, the problem is we're going to look at them as an authority. Kalomar, this means maybe you're going to explore with your mind's eye. And you're going to see, or you're going to think, that these creatures lead the world. And they are indeed what Hashem has given out for the entire world. Hashem did appoint the sun to light up the world. And you watch them and you see that they live, they come into existence, they don't disintegrate like everything else in the world does. And therefore that might lead you to the wrong conclusion. But Tomar, you're going to say, that we should bow to them and serve them. That's what Hashem was worried about. That's what He said. Don't lift your eyes heavenwards. Don't think that these heavenly bodies have any power. But the same topic, Hashem also commanded us, and He said, in the Shema, we say every day, Hishamru lachem pen yiftel levavchem. Guard yourself, maybe your heart will be convinced. Convinced to what? Convinced that these heavenly things have some kind of authority. Kolomar shalot tit'u bihirhur halev la'avod elu. Don't be mistaken with your mind's thoughts to serve these things. Liyot sarsur benechem uben haboreh, to be an intermediary between you and between the Creator. Says the Rambam halacha bet. Not only is it a problem to entertain thoughts about other bodies, Sfarim Rabim chivru ovdei kochavim ba'avodata. Actually, we know that there are many books that the non-Jewish people, idol worshippers, made when it comes to serving idols. Heach ikar avodata, uma ma'aseh umishpateh. What's the fundamental of each service? How to do it, and all the laws about it. Tzivanu hakadosh baruch hu. Part of the mitzvahs that Hashem commanded us, shelo likrot be'otan hasfarim klal, not to read those books at all. V'lo neharher ba, v'lo bedavar midvareha. Not to use our minds to think about these things, not even one of the things. Va'afilu, says the Rambam, lihistakel bidmut hatzura, even to look at a statue asur, is forbidden. Shene'amar, as it says, al tifnu el ha'elilim. Don't turn to the gods. This was the verse that the Rambam brought down in the beginning of the book when he described this mitzvah originally. It says, do not turn your attention, don't show interest in idol worship, even to look at a statue. Rashi says that looking at a statue means any statue, any 3D image you can't look at. The Rambam holds only if it's for idol worship. But the commentaries say that even if it wasn't served yet, but it was just put up for idol worship, that's already enough to make it forbidden. You cannot look at a statue that was put up to be served. And about this topic it also says, I warn you, you should not inquire about their gods, saying, how do they serve it? You shouldn't even care how the goyim serve their idols. You shouldn't ask about the ways of service. How is it? Even if you say, no, I'm not going to serve it, I just want to know, I'm curious. How do these different idols work? It causes you to go after it, and to do as they do. As the end of the verse says, you're going to ask, how do they serve? And I'm also going to do it. In other words, what happens when you show too much interest is that you end up doing it yourself. Says the Rambam, Halacha Gimel, all of the above psukim that seem to be saying different expressions, don't let your heart be convinced, don't turn after it, don't ask about their gods. The Rambam says they're all one mitzvah. They're all one concept. The idea is not to show interest in idol worshippers. And so therefore, there's different verses here, but they're all one of the Taryag mitzvah. They're all equal to one mitzvah. The Rambam in Sefer HaMitzvot, he has a whole set of rules, what counts as a mitzvah and what doesn't. And he says if you have a number of verses that all say the same thing, it's one mitzvah. It doesn't count as separate mitzvahs. If you show interest in idols in a way that you do an action, you get lashes. Of course, if you just show interest with your thought, Torah can't hold you liable for a thought. We can't punish you for a thought. But if you do an action, then you get punished. What would be the example of an action? So the commentaries bring a couple of options. Some people say, let's say there was an idol that was covered with a cloth, and you were curious, so you uncovered it. You showed interest with an action. That's forbidden. The Kesef Mishnah says, what happens if a person wants to practice? He heard that there's a way to offer incense to an idol, so he wants this just out of curiosity to see how it looks. So he makes the potion, and he sacrifices, also an action. Others even say, if you take an extra walk to go see an idol, holech lirota, the walking itself is called an action. And others say, if you read a book and you mouth the words with your mouth, we have a principle, akimat tzvatav haveh maaseh, if you move your lips, it's called an action. Even that, if you read a idol worshipping book, but you say the words audibly, you get malkut, you get lashes. V'lo avodat kochavim bilvad hu she'asur lihipanot achareh b'machshava. Says the Rambam. And now he goes to the next mitzvah in these chapters. It's not just actual idol worship that you're not allowed to show interest in with your thoughts. Ela kol machshava, any thought, shehu gorem lo la'adam la'akor ikar mi'ikarei Torah, which causes a person to uproot fundamental principles in the Torah, muzharin anu shalo laha'alota al libenu. We have a warning not to bring it up on our minds. You cannot think about things that will lead you down the wrong path of Torah. We shouldn't remove our minds to these things. Think about and get drawn into these different thoughts that our minds can have. A human mind is very limited. It's very full of flaws. Not every mind can reach the truth the way it's supposed to be thought about. If every person would go after whatever he thinks, he can destroy the world according to his limitation of his mind. Ketzad, for example, what are some examples of a person who lets his mind wander and may end up asking the wrong questions? Sometimes a person thinking too much will go yatur achar avodat kochavim. Sometimes he'll go after idol worship. That'll be the classic example. But then there are other questions he might ask. Sometimes he might ponder the unity of Hashem. Shema hu, Shema eno. Maybe Hashem is one, maybe He's not one. Then he starts going malamala, malamata. What's above the heavens, what's below the earth. Malefanim, malachor, what was before time, what's after time. Upamim banuvuah. Sometimes he'll think about prophecy. Shema hi emet, Shema hi ena. Maybe it's truth, maybe it's not. Upamim batorah. His mind might lead him to asking questions about the Torah. Shema hi min hashamayim, Shema ena. Maybe it is from heaven, maybe it's not divine. And this person will not know the principles or the ways, the mechanisms, sheyadin bahem, that you should use in logic, ad sheyedah ha'emet al buryo, till you know the truth on its foundation. V'nimtza yotzeh l'dei minut, and it's going to bring you to heresy. So don't let your mind wander everywhere you want. V'alinyan zeh hizhira Torah v'ne'emar ba. And about this topic, Torah warns us and says, and this is a separate avera, v'lo taturu acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem asher atem zonim. Don't go astray after your hearts and after your eyes, which usually lead you off the path. Klomar, meaning to say, lo yimashech kol echad mikem achar dato haktzara. Don't let every person go after his limited mind, v'yidamesh machshavto maseget ha'emet, and imagine that your thought reaches the truth. Your thought can go to many different places. Kach amru chachamim, so said our sages. Acharei levavchem, don't go after your heart, means zu minut, means thoughts of heresy. V'acharei einechem, don't go after your eyes, zu znut, is simple immorality, promiscuity. The lav zeh, this commandment, afal pishu gorem la'adam litordo min ha'olam haba, even though it causes a person ultimately to leave the world to come, ein bo malkut. Again, there's no lashes. Why? Because the only way to transgress it is by thinking things, and thinking things are not a maaseh. What if you do something about it? The Rambam said before, if you show interest in idols with actions, you get malkut. What about over here? The Rambam doesn't mention it. The commentaries discuss it. Some say that yes, you do get malkut. Some say over here, no. When it comes to v'lo taturu, no matter what you do, it's only a spiritual avera. There's no physical punishment. Halacha dalet. Mitzvat avodat kochavim keneged ha-mitzvot kulan hi. The mitzvah of idol worship is so severe, it has value equal to all the mitzvahs. Shene'emar, as it says, v'chi tishgu v'lo ta'asu et kol ha-mitzvot. There's a portion in the Torah, we're going to learn about it much later, it's called par helem davar. If a high court rules incorrectly on something, so everybody follows the high court, but they made a mistake. So they have to bring a special korban. One of the times they have to bring a special korban is if they give a ruling in Avodah Zarah. If they give an incorrect ruling about serving idols. But the Torah describes that as not doing all the mitzvahs. What do you mean not doing all the mitzvahs? You didn't do idol worship correctly. It's one mitzvah. But the Torah calls it all the mitzvahs. We learn from tradition, and the Torah is talking about Avodah Zarah. And it calls it all the mitzvahs, which means that it's compared to all the mitzvahs. From here you learn. Anybody who admits to the truth of idol worship, you turn out to be denying the entire Torah, and all the prophets who spoke about idol worship, and all the commandments which the prophets received, from Adam Harishon, because he also got a commandment not to serve idols. One of the Sheva mitzvot b'nei Noach is not to serve idols. So you're really denying from Adam till the end of the world. Shene'emar, as it says, min hayom asher tziva Hashem v'hala ledorotechem. From the day that God commanded originally about idols, and onwards for all your generations. On the other hand, the chala kofer, if you deny the power of idols, modeh b'chala Torah kula, you are considered to be admitting to the truth of the whole Torah, u'b'chala neviim, and all the prophets, u'b'chol ma shenitztavu neviim me'adam ad sof ha'olam, and everything which the prophets were commanded from Adam till the end of the world, v'hu ikar kol ha'mitzvot kulan, avodah zarah, and staying away from it is the fundamental principle of all the mitzvahs. So now we're going to move on to the actual laws. Till now it was like the introduction. What is the mitzvah? What shouldn't you do? What actually happens? Halacha he Yisrael she'avad avodat kochavim. You have a Jew. He goes, worships an idol. He does the avera. Harehu ke'oved kochavim l'chol davar. The moment he does that, he turns into an idol worshiper for every halacha. For example, we're going to learn later on in these halachot that if a non-Jew makes an idol, it's forbidden right away, even if nobody served it. You can't have benefit from it, you can't use it, nothing. If a Jew makes an idol, it's only forbidden once you serve it. So here, this guy becomes like a goy, and now if he makes an idol, it's forbidden right away. He's not like a regular Jew who would do an avera. If a guy is mechalel Shabbat, so we say he's a Jew, he just did something very, very wrong. This person becomes like a goy. Mumar la'avodat kochavim, harehu mumar l'chol Torah kula. If a person is called a mumar, is like a heretic, an apostate, somebody who rebels against the law of idol worshipping is like rebelling against the whole Torah. Many times, when a person does an avera, he's called a mumar le'ota mitzvah. He's an apostate for that mitzvah, and so you may not be able to trust him about that mitzvah. But let's say if he does kosher slaughter, does shchita, you can eat the meat. Or if he brings the korban to the temple, you can bring the korban. But if you're called the mumar l'chol Torah kula, if you have the title of I am against the whole Torah, if you slaughter meat, even kosher, you can't eat it. If he brings a korban to the Beit HaMikdash, we don't accept it. So in other words, Rambam is saying over here, even though he only rebelled against one mitzvah, mumar la'avodat kochavim, but because it's so severe, he's considered mumar l'chol Torah kula. He's considered an apostate for the whole Torah.
He's not Jewish?
Yeah, according to the commentaries, you can't count him for a minion. Oh, you're saying, does he lose his neshama? No, the commentaries over here say you still can't do certain things. Like you still...
even a Jew, even if he converts,
yes.
he's still a Jew.
Yes, Yisrael, afal pi shechata, Yisrael hu. He's still a Jew.
It was.
I'll tell you what. Here the Rambam is talking about halachically, like legally. We're not talking. When you say Yisrael hu, we're talking like in spiritual sense, right? You never lose your neshama. You never lose your connection. You can leave the family. It doesn't matter what you do. Here we're talking about. Here we're getting cut and dry. You can't eat his shechita. You can't count him for a minion. If you find his lost object on the floor, you don't have to return it. V'chein haminim mi Yisrael. Some texts have epikorsim. They're both types of heretics. According to the authoritative texts say minim. Minim, heretics from among the Jewish people, einan ki Yisrael davar min hadvarim. They're not considered Jews for anything. Ve'ein mekablim otam b'tshuva le'olam. We never take them. We never accept their tshuva ever. Shene'emar, we'll see in a second. Shene'emar kol ba'eha lo yishuvun v'lo yasigu orchot chayim. All those who go to her, which means go to the idol worshippers, can never come back and will never receive the way of life. The Rambam later himself in Hilchot Shuvah writes that a min could do tshuva. So in his lifetime, they asked the Rambam, how can you write two opposite things? So he says, here he's talking about the Jewish people. When the Jewish people see somebody go off the path, they should always treat him with suspicion. In the Kabbalim means don't ever accept his tshuva as full. Like you never know what he might be thinking. Hilchot Shuvah, we're talking about Hashem. Hashem knows what a person is thinking. He did tshuva, nothing will stand in the way of the tshuva. But for a Jewish person, we have to always be wary of him. Once he went off the path and that way he became a min, you have to stay safe, be cautious. Okay, so here the Rambam gives the definition. It's a very general definition. In Hilchot Shuvah, he's going to go very into detail. What's exactly a min? There's 5 types of minim, 3 types of apikorsim. It's very, very defined. Here the Rambam keeps it very general. He says, V'haminim, what are the minim? Hem hatarim achar machshavot libam. They are the ones that don't listen to the mitzvah before. They go after whatever they like to think about. B'sichlut dvarim she'amarnu. With all the foolish things which we said. Ad shenimtzu'u, till it turns out, ovrim al gufei Torah lehachis. They end up transgressing Torah bodies, in other words, main Torah principles, just to anger Hashem, bishat benefesh, which means like with ridicule, making fun, biyad rama, and purposely. V'omrim she'en bazeh avon. And they say there's no sin. That's the basic definition of a min. Exactly what it is, again, later on, the Rambam goes into the very definition. You don't believe there's a God, you don't believe there's a Torah, you don't believe there's Olam Haba, many specific gufei Torah. Here he's talking about the general concept. A person allows himself to be influenced by his thoughts, thinks whatever he wants, he's a min. You can't speak to them, you can't debate with them at all. Don't go close to the entrance of her house. Or says Apikoros, some texts. You can assume that the thoughts of a min are for idol worship. Therefore, if a Jew writes a Torah scroll and he's a min, when he writes Hashem's name, he's probably thinking about idols. So you have to burn that Sefer Torah, like we learned before in Hilchot Yesodei Torah in chapter 6. The bottom line is that the min is considered like a Jew who served idols, and that way we don't deal with him. Of course, today we don't have such people that purposely serve Hashem out of anger. It was always a history and a reason, and so we were much more accepting. Right. The Jewish community today. In those days, you were out on the fringe, you were out, you were done. Today, we're much more tolerant because we say that the whole Avodah Zarah doesn't exist in that way that it used to. Halacha Vav. And here we're going to segue into the next topic of this chapter, which is cursing Hashem. Kol hamodeh ba'avodat kochavim shehi emet. Anybody who admits to the truth of idol worship, afal pi shelo avodah, even if he didn't serve it, he just in his mind admits to the truth of it. Hareza mecharef umegadef et Hashem hanichbad v'hanora. He is shaming and embarrassing and essentially cursing, degrading the holy and honorable name of Hashem. Ve'echad ha'oved avodat kochavim ve'echad ha'megadef et Hashem. And therefore, a person who serves idol worship is the same category as somebody who just with his mouth curses God. Shene'emar, as it says, ve'hanefesh asher ta'aseh b'yad rama min ha'ezrach o min hager. A soul, any person who does idol worship willfully, with a raised hand, it means like, he's doing it knowingly, whether he's a citizen, a born Jew, or a convert, et Hashem hu megadef, he is considered to be cursing God. Lefikach, therefore, tolin, oved, avodat kochavim, kemoshe tolin et hamegadef. We hang a person who serves idols like a person, like we hang the one who curses God. Ushnehem niskalin, they both get stoned. Hanging was never administered as a form of death. A person would be stoned to death, then he would be hung for a minute on a pole. So here also, just like the Megadef gets hung, the one who curses Hashem, so too the one who shows idols also gets hung, because they're together, they're in the same category. Umipnei zeh says the Rambam, and therefore, kalalti din ha-Megadef bihilchot avodat kochavim. I'm going to include the laws of somebody that curses Hashem in the laws of serving idols, even though he's not serving an idol necessarily, but it's in the same level. Sheshnehem kofrim ba'ikarhem, because they both are considered to be denying the fundamental principle of the Torah. There's a great sage in the last generation, his name was Rabbi Meir Don Plotsky. He wrote a sefer called the Kli Chemda. And he says, we know that you have to give your life up for three main averot, for murder, for immorality, and for avodah zarah. So if the Rambam equates cursing Hashem with serving idols, if somebody holds a gun to your head and says, curse Hashem or I kill you, should you die? Is it in the same category? What do you think?
You can obviously argue both ways.
Yeah. He says that it seems to him that you do have to. Like, misvara, logically it would seem that you do have to give your life. But there's a letter from the Rambam, which he wrote in his own lifetime, called the Igeret Hashmad, which was basically written to a community of Jews who were being forcefully coerced into conversion. And there were some rabbis who believed that they should all run away or be killed, and rather than convert. And the Rambam has a whole letter to them. So but there he writes that if a person just forces you to speak idol worship, you don't have to die. So the Kli Chemda writes, so exactly, you say one thing and you mean another thing. So he says, if even when it comes to Avodah Zarah itself, the Rambam permitted you to speak, not meaning what you spoke, so certainly for Megadef, it seems like also that you don't have to get killed for that. Halacha Zayin. Ve'elu hein dinei ha-Megadef. What are the laws of the one who curses God? So just a couple of short halachot. We go through everything. Ein ha-Megadef chayav skila. The person who curses Hashem is not obligated to be stoned, not liable to be stoned, ad sheyifaresh et Hashem hamiyuchad shel arba otiyot, till he uses explicitly the special name of Hashem of 4 letters. Shehu, which is Aleph Daled Nun Yud. We would think it's Yud Hey Vav Hey, that's the special name. The Rambam says even. Of course, Yud Hey Vav Hey is considered God's special name, but even Aleph Daled Nun Yud. V'yevarech oto, and you have to bless it. The Rambam always uses the word bless instead of curse, but it means curse, it's euphemism. You have to curse the special name of God, b'shem min hashemot she'einam nimchakim, with another name that is not erased. The structure of a curse, I know we think of it like, may Hashem be cursed. That's not how it goes. According to halacha, the structure of a curse is, you have to say, may Hashem curse Hashem. That's how you have to structure it. And you have to, for the first word, you have to use one of God's 7 names that are not erased, like Shakai, Shem Kel, Tzvaot, Elokim, whatever. And the second name has to be either Yud Kei Vav Kei or Ad Aleph Daled Nun Yud. So you have to say, when I give, for example, Elokim should curse Adnan. That would be the structure of a forbidden curse. So you have to explicitly say the Shema Miyuchad, v'yevarech oto, and bless it, in other words, curse it with another holy name. Shene'emar, as it says, v'nokev Shem Hashem, the one who explicitly says the name of Hashem. Al Hashem Miyuchad chayav skila. Only for the specific ineffable name, you're obligated to be stoned. V'al sh'ara kinuyim ba'azhara, other names of Hashem or nicknames, you only get a negative commandment, but you don't get stoned. There are those authorities who say she'eino chayav ela al shem yud hey vav hey. You're only going to get stoned for using the name yud hey vav hey. But I say, says the Rambam, it's a very rare expression of the Rambam, I say, shal shnehem hu niskal, that he gets stoned for both of them. Bottom line, yud hey vav hey or adna. Halacha chet. Azhara shel megadef minayin. Where do we see a warning for the one who curses? You can only get punished if there's a warning in the Torah. Where does it say you shouldn't curse Hashem elsewhere? Shene'emar Elohim lo tekalel. You should not curse God. Literally, it means you should not curse a judge. But the Rambam says it also refers to Hashem. B'chol yom vayom, says the Rambam. All day, when we're in court, if somebody is brought to court because he cursed Hashem, when the witnesses talk about it, they don't use Hashem's name. They don't keep saying, oh, he said, may Hashem curse Hashem, because then the witnesses themselves are cursing Hashem. So, b'chol yom vayom, all day in court, bodkin ha'idim b'kinuyam, or b'kinuyim. We investigate or interrogate the witnesses with nicknames. They say, Yakeh Yosei et Yosei. Instead of saying Yakeh Hashem et Hashem, instead of saying what the guy actually said, they use the word Yosei. Why do they use the word Yosei? First of all, it has 4 letters, like Hashem's name, but also the word Yosei has the gematria of 86, which is the same gematria as Elokim. So they use the word Yake Yose Yes Yose. Nigmar Hadin, once the court case is sealed and we know the guy is guilty, Motzi'in et Kol Adam Lachutz. We take everyone out of the court, V'sho'alim et Hagadol Sheba'idim v'omrim la, and we ask the bigger of the witnesses, and we say, Emor Masha Shamata Beferush. Repeat exactly what you heard. Even though now you're going to say a curse to Hashem, but we need you to say exactly what you heard, so we know that he's going to be liable. V'hu Omer, he says, he repeats the curse. V'hadayanim omdim al raglehem v'korim. And the judges have to stand up and tear their garments, v'lo ma'achin, and they don't sew it back up. V'ha'ed hasheni omer, the second witness doesn't have to repeat it. He just says, Af ani kemoto shamati. Yeah, I heard what he said. If there was many witnesses, everybody has to say, I heard like this. So, in the end, the court will hear the exact curse, but only once. If a one who cursed Hashem retracts within the time it takes to speak, toch kedei dibur is a halachic measurement of time. It means the time it takes to say 3 words. Shalom alecha Rabbi. Peace unto you, my teacher. That's called toch kedei dibur. So if a person curses Hashem, and then within 2 seconds says, I didn't mean it. He retracts it. Eino klum. Typically, in Jewish law it is. If a person gives a ring to a Jewish woman, he says, you're my wife. And he says, I'm just kidding. If it's within 3 seconds, it's done. He can take it back. Here you can't take it back. Ela kivan shegidef be'edim niskal. The moment you curse Hashem in front of witnesses, you get stoned. Some commentaries even say you don't have to be warned. Typically, you have to be warned in order to get punished. The Kesef Mishneh, who was the primary commentary on the Rambam, says you don't need to be warned. Why? Because the original Megadef in the desert, Moshe Rabbeinu, the person who was kicked out of the tent of the area we had it a couple of weeks ago in the Parsha, HaMekalel, so he wasn't warned. Others argue, the Radvaz says that Hashem knew that he did it on purpose, but today you do have to warn.
Son of a Connor or something?
Huh? He was son of an Egyptian, so he didn't have a tribe, yeah. But there's somebody that says that the Rambam means the whole idea of a warning is to tell if you're doing it purposely or mistakenly. When you curse God, there's no mistaken. But who doesn't know that cursing Hashem is forbidden? He may not know how severe it is, he may not know how bad it is, but you can't say, I didn't mean it. What do you mean you didn't mean it? The words you said are cursing Hashem. So therefore, you don't have to be warned. According to the Rambam, as soon as you do it in presence of witnesses, you get stoned. Misha gidefet Hashem, b'shem avodat kochavim. What if somebody cursed God, not with the halachic structure, but with a different? He said, an idol should curse Hashem. God forbid. Let's say he said, Peor, Baal Peor should curse Hashem. So now the court can't give you a killing, but Kana'im pog'im bo, v'hargim oto. Anybody who is zealous for God's honor just can go at him and murder him on the spot. V'im lo hargu Kana'im, but if they didn't murder him, u'bal lebeidin, and he comes to court, the court will never put him to death. Eino niskal ad sheyevarech b'shem min hashemot hamiyuchadim. He will not be stoned unless he blesses or he curses with one of the names that are unique to Hashem. Halacha yut. Anybody who's in the audience, anybody who hears when somebody curses Hashem, must tear his clothes. Even if the person just cursed a nickname of Hashem. May God curse Chanun or curse Rachum. If you heard it, the guy won't be punished, but you have to tear your clothing. But you have to hear it from a Jew. A guy doesn't necessarily count. If you heard it directly, or if you heard it from somebody who heard it, like before, the judges heard it from the witness, they have to tear their clothes. If you hear a non-Jew, an idol worshiper cursing Hashem, you don't have to tear your garments. Eliakim and Shevna didn't tear their clothes only because Rav Shakeh was a Jewish apostate. This is also a tragic story. Sancheriv was trying to take over the world, and he came to Jerusalem. Chizkiah Melech was the king then, and they sent Chizkiah sent Eliakim v'Shevna, 2 of his advisors, to go and negotiate with Sancheriv. Sancheriv had an advisor who was called Rav Shakeh. Rav Shakeh was actually a Jew. Yisrael Mumar. He turned to the enemy, and they basically told him, stay away from Jerusalem. It's not gonna work for you. Hashem's gonna save us. And he said, Mi b'chol elokeha aratzot ha'eleh asher hitzilu et artzam miyadi. Show me any god of any of the other lands that saved their land from my hands, from Sancheriv hands. Ki yatzil Hashem et Yerushalayim miyadi. That God will save Yerushalayim from my hands. So he shamed Hashem. Rav Shakeh was a Jew, and that's the words that he used. He disgraced God. So it says in the Torah, in the prophets, that in Yeshayahu, that Eliakim v'Shevna tore their clothes. So the Rambam is saying, why would they tear their clothes? If they heard it from a non-Jew, shouldn't it be a no problem? So he said, no, Rav Shakeh was a Jew. He was a Jewish apostate, therefore they tore their clothes. Kol ha'edim v'hadayanim. There's another special law of the megadef. All the witnesses and the judges, somchim et yedehem echad echad al rosh ha'megadef. They have to lean their hands on the head of the one who cursed. Typically, you don't do that. Only the megadef. Ve'omer lo, you tell him, damcha beroshecha she'ata garamta lach. Your blood is your own fault. You caused it. Ve'ein bechol harogei beidin misha somchim alav. There is no other person killed by the court who we lean our hands on. Ela megadef bilvad. Only the one who curses God. Shene'emar v'samchu kol hashomim et yedehem. All the ones who heard it to lean their hands. That was in the desert. So the Rambam learns from the desert that also nowadays the megadef has to be leaned on before he's put to death by the court.